Hey there, bestie. I'm Lori Me, your What to Read Next podcast host. Join me as we dive into exciting new reads that'll have you reaching for your TBR pile in no time. From group mysteries to spicy romances, we'll explore it all and help you find your next favorite book. So grab a cup of tea, cozy it up, and let's discover some amazing reads together. Hi, Yulin. Welcome to What Your Next podcast.
Hi, thank you for having me.
So happy to have you here. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
So I am a screenwriter and director. I'm currently adapting Emily Henry's People You Meet on Vacation and Beach Read for the screen. And I also have my own debut novel, How to End a Love Story, coming out on April 9th.
So we're going to talk about, because your book actually deals with some of the screenwriting process and adapting books. So that's part of the book. But we're going to talk about first your job at Hollywood. How did you land that job? How did you get into this world?
Yeah, how did I get into this world? I think it began when I was like 11 years old and watching them announce the Harry Potter movies being adapted and like kind of like chewing on my nails like, oh my God, are they going to destroy my childhood? And I think around then was when I was like, I think I'm going to try and claw my way into a position of power and influence over all of the future books that I love. And I used to write a lot of fan fiction. And I remember when I was like 15, I made this deal with myself that like, if I could get my one fic on like the top 10 list for that couple for the year, then I would have a future for myself as a professional writer. And then I did, and I do. So shout out to my 15-year-old self. And in college, I studied creative writing and international relations and politics. I thought briefly that I wanted to go into journalism. It turned out I just wanted to watch The West Wing more. And then I started writing all these screenplays and kind of handing them off to other people to direct. And then they kept fucking it up. So I was like, I'm going to do it. So then I kind of fell in love with directing that way. I moved out to LA to do the NBC Page program, which is one of those kind of entry-level jobs where you're like giving tours on the Tonight Show with Jay Leno. And I was on assignment with like NBC Talent Relations and worked the SAG Awards, I remember. Also, I worked on the set of The Office for their very last day of filming, which was like a very cool thing. And I fucked up a delivery there. And I remember like, oh my God. So that was kind of like my way into this industry. And I wasn't very good at my job. Like you're supposed to leave the Page program and get a job by being hired into one of these departments. And I was kind of like antisocial and would like sit in my car at lunch and eat by myself because I just wanted to be alone. So I did not thrive in that environment. And I was making all these short films on the weekends and sending them off to film festivals where the median age was probably about like 65. And everything I was doing was like kind of a coming of age thing about like a girl who's dealing with her insecurities about her chest size. And so I was like, this is not exactly my target demo. And somebody said, you should try going to VidCon, which is this convention for online video. I go there, the sea of screaming teenage fangirls. And it was like, oh my God, my people are here. And so I started 2 YouTube channels, and I did one where it was a series called Kissing in the Rain, where it was like actors who kept finding themselves kissing in the rain. And I would use each of these webisodes to kind of explore a mini adaptation of something I had loved. So I did like an Anne of Green Gables episode. There was one that I think was like Lily and James from like my Harry Potter fan fiction. There was also something from I Capture the Castle, I think. So that was kind of like me getting into the adaptation game early on. And then from that, I went like Tumblr viral because there was this transmedia component because it was like 2014. Because of that, Ron Howard and Brian Grazer's company kind of noticed me and they were like, do you want to do this short film incubator? We'll give you $10,000 to make a short film. So I did a short film that was about wizard rock. It was called I Ship It. And it was about a girl who like uses a wizard rock battle of the bands to get back at her ex-boyfriend. And so we sold that to the CW and did a web series that won a Stream Award. And then they were like, do you want to do this as a TV show? Did it as a TV show, premiered to the second lowest ratings that the CW has ever seen, promptly canceled. But it's okay. I'm in the WGA now. And at this point, I'm allowed to like pitch on other kind of, we call them open writing assignments. Like the studios have these open writing assignments where they're like, we're looking for a writer on this. And then the agencies go and send their people there. So I think the year is like 2018 and Crazy Rich Asians has come out. And so they're like, we're looking for our Chinese restaurant movie project. And I was like, I will pitch on your Chinese restaurant movie project. And I took them so many iterations because I think like I would bring them a version and they would be like, that's not quite right. But like, what if you change this? And I found out later they were meeting with like way more senior writers than me, but I think those writers were not as desperate as me. So when those people were told like, not this version, could you like adjust it and do something else? They were like, no, I'm going to go get another job. Whereas I was like, it's between this and Postmates, baby. So I just kept pitching them stuff until finally they said yes to me. So that was my first like studio feature sale. And then I think around then I had like met with my reps and I was feeling a little bit like stuck because things weren't moving. There's a lot of waiting in our business. And they were like, well, you should find something you want to adapt. So I remember going to the library and look for a book to adapt. And across like the way, I saw a spine of a book that said, I believe in a thing called love. And I was like, oh my God, I do believe in a thing called love. So I pick it out. It's by Maureen Gu. And it's this delightful YA about a girl who's obsessed with Korean dramas and uses the laws of the K-drama to get a boyfriend. So I was like, I would like to adapt this. And like by pure fucking luck, Maureen had just moved to my agency at UTA. And so my agents were like, well, this actually works out great. Let's do this package. And they were like, we're going to take it out and we're going to see if there's any appetite for this in the marketplace. And then they come back to me and they're like, there's no appetite for this in the marketplace, but are you happy to adapt it on spec, which means for no money? And I was like, sure. Yes. So I adapted on spec for no money. And then we take it out and then we do sell it to Netflix. And then at that point in time, I think I've sold a couple like pilots because I'm also like developing TV pilots in the background. So I think at that point I had sold like 2 pilots. And then development cycles pass, years pass, I age. And then I get sent for your consideration email with the manuscript for People We Meet on Vacation. And I read it and I was like, oh my God, this has more locations than a James Bond movie. And it also treats romance as it, in my opinion, should be, which is serious. Yeah. I think as much as we talk about rom-coms in Hollywood, I think that can be a very flattening moniker for the genre that brings me so much joy because I think there's so much more than just comedy to a truly good romance that ends happily. And I think Emily Henry is somebody who really understands that. And that was something I resonated with her work like pretty much right away. And so I got on board on People We Meet on Vacation. We sold that to Sony 3000 Pictures with Temple Hill as the producer. And then that fall, I think I started drafting my own novel because I had this moment where I was like, I feel so lucky. I recognize that like I am living the dream essentially that I created for myself when I was 11 years old. And then I was like, and I'm like, this is kind of similar to the plot beats of People We Meet on Vacation because Poppy has this moment where she's like, I got everything I wanted and I'm not. And so I had this moment where I was like, did I get into this just to do adaptation or do I have anything original left within me? And that was when I decided to draft my own novel, which I was never actually going to show anybody in case it turned out to be bad. But I knew I wanted to set it in a world that required zero research for me. I pretty much reached as far as like 2 inches to the right and said, okay, it's about adaptation in a writer's room in television rather than features. And yeah, that's kind of how we got here.
All right. I am fascinated. I love this journey. I love the zigzagging, the places where you're going, and all the different push and pull and all the different no's you receive at the same time, the yeses you received, and following that path. When did you sleep? Did you get any sleep during this time or?
I feel like I was in a chrysalis stage for all of my 20s. Like I was sleeping. I was for sure sleeping. Not a lot during the drafting of my novel, to be honest, because I was pretty much writing from like 5 a.m. to 10 a.m. And then I would switch over to People We Meet on Vacation from 10 to 5 p.m. And then from 5 p.m. to midnight, I would pick up back up on my novel. And that was like a fugue state. But I did sleep, but I didn't I look back on that time and I'm always like, I don't think I could have gotten here any faster. Like,
Yeah.
I don't think that I could have worked harder in
Hmm.
terms of what my energy and emotional and psychological limits were. I
Yeah.
think I pretty much pushed myself as hard as I could. So I'm always like, all right, that's good to know.
Yeah. I love, it's part of the process. I think like especially the 20s, you spend so much time hustling and trying to figure out who you're set yourself in the world and doing so much of the grunt work and doing so much of proving yourself to others and trying and also failing and experimenting and trying different things. And I would say like my 30s were like that. Most of I think I'm now in my 40s and now I'm mostly settled down, but to get to that place is a lot of zigzagging, a lot of trying different things, failing a lot of things, trying something else, following that crumb of like something I like. Maybe this is something it's respected, and then trying to figure out, your sense in the world, especially in Hollywood. That's such a like a cutthroat environment. I can imagine it's just trying to stay true to yourself was part of the journey.
Yeah, I
Well,
think it's like there is a lot of luck and privilege obviously I think involved. Like I think I won a lot of like lotteries by birth,
yeah,
but I'm also like I don't think I don't think I tripped and got here. I very much set my eyes on a target and I was
yeah.
like I will do everything that is within my power to try and get there. And so having that as kind of the compass of knowing where I wanted to end up was always very helpful.
Yeah, I think it started me of the outcome and understand like you set the intention and like you don't know how it's going to work out, but you have trust that it has worked out in the past and it's certainly going to work out in the future. However, that's going to look like is that's a journey. That's a part of that part that you got to enjoy or dread
Mhm.
or everything in
Yeah.
between. So let's talk about how to end a love story. You mentioned that it's a writer's room, it's an adaptation from a TV series, as a teen TV series. So I see like all the parallels and the different nuggets from your life that can made it through. But how did you come up with the story? The conflict is so central and there's no way to overcome the conflict. At least from the first part of the book, you're like, how this is gonna work. What made you decide to create that bigger stake and unravel it for that process?
Should we say what the stake is?
We can say I think it's the first chapter. The stake is
Yeah.
it's a prologue. It's prologue. So
Right. Yeah. So for context, I guess minor spoilers for the first 2 pages. The way that the hero and the heroine are connected is that they go to high school together. She's like kind of the editor in chief of the school paper. He's the homecoming king. And then one night, her younger sister decides to walk into traffic to end her life. And Grant is driving the car that hits her. And so the book opens at her little sister's funeral, and the hero walks into this room that he is not wanted in, and they quickly throw him out. And then the next time they see each other is 13 years later. So in terms of why that actually came quite late. I knew I wanted to set it in the world of adaptation. I knew I wanted it to be people who knew each other in high school and were seeing each other again for the first time. But I think I had all the trappings of something that felt like this kind of a lighter rom-com. And I could feel that I was like, I wanted to explore something a little bit closer to the things that first excited me, I think, when I got into storytelling, like when I was like trawling fanfiction.net back in the day. I was always drawn to kind of angstier like material. I liked when things were kind of dramatic and then and grounded and ended up in a place that was more hopeful. Like I liked being taken on that journey. And I think because I do so much genre work in Hollywood, a lot of the times there's less room for that a little bit. I think it would be hard for me to have pitched this story as a movie. And so I kind of came up with it about like a day before I started drafting, maybe 48 hours, somewhere in the 36-hour range. I think I remember walking into the kitchen and turning to my husband and being like, if I also connected them in this way. And he was like, that's sticky. That could be compelling. And so I definitely kind of brought that in very late in the game, but it opened up a lot more room on things that I wanted to explore narratively.
Yeah, I think like it's a rom-com, but it has the angst of a romance that I love. It's the sense of like, will they, won't they, how is this gonna work? Because I know romance has rules, and romance it's gonna be happily ever after, love story is the central point, and everything else there's gonna be overcome, there's gonna be breakups, there's gonna be things, there's gonna be obstacles. That's what the author does. And the stakes were so high that I was like, I need to read the last page to understand that everything's gonna be okay. But this was not gonna take me by surprise. And it's but
Yeah.
it's sometimes that's what it comes down to. But it has this sense of like it has the makings of a rom-com, but it also has the depth of an angsty novel. Like one of those angsty novels where you're like, you just want to throw the book and go for a while and then come back to it and you're like, okay, I need to read this again. And you should just hold on to this because this is a journey that I'm here for it. I'm here for the characters to come together to deny their feelings because they're not supposed to, and then same time bring it back together. It's kind of like it made me feel like Romeo and Juliet adaptation from 1996 with Leo and Claire Danes, where they're not supposed to be together. But
Right. Yeah.
it's that same feeling of angst that you're like, you were not supposed to, but they can. They're meant to be.
Yeah. I love a factor that feels like we mustn't. Like, I
Yeah.
think, I grew up in a very repressed very repressed childhood home, I would say, like
Yeah.
where I wasn't really allowed to date. And so I think that has probably carried over into my like adult age where I'm just like, I love anything that's like, they can't.
Heck, but they must.
They can't possibly. We mustn't. It's bad.
Yes. And I'm glad that you didn't skim on the spiciness. So there was
Oh,
spiciness
no.
galore.
There is spice. This is an open door romance for
Yeah.
sure.
Yes, it has all the makings of a head that we want to keep, telling people, like putting other people's name, like you must read this now. So,
I feel
um,
like there's always a good spicy book that you want to be able to like peddle out to
yeah,
people. Like, I hope this awakens something in you.
yes, yes, please. So let's try some book recommendations. What kind of books do you tend to read? I know you mentioned a little bit rom-coms and romance, but any other genre that you go to that's just kind of like a good escape for you?
I primarily read historical romance and celebrity memoirs. Those are like my two go-to genres when I'm reading for pleasure. And so of the historicals, I mean, the historical that got me into romance novels, the very first one I read was Halfway to Heaven by Susan Wiggs in seventh grade. But that it was too adult for me. I was not ready. And so I remembered it. It was like blazoned in my brain. But then I did not return to the genre until 2016 when I was suddenly like in need of escapism. And I found Private Arrangements by Sherry Thomas. And that was kind of the book that led me down the rabbit hole of romance novels. And I found from her like Courtney Milan, and it was like the Brother Sisters series there. And then from there, I found Sarah McLean and all like the I read through her like entire back catalog, and then that led me to like Lisa Kleypas and Joanna Bourne and all these like Tessa Dare, and then I think Tessa Bailey, just because I was like, as long as I'm on the Tessas, which led me back to contemporaries a little bit. And I was like, I really like contemporaries, but I love historicals. So yeah, those are kind of that's kind of where I live. That's my happy spot. And then in terms of celebrity book memoirs, Alan Rickman's published diaries are fascinating to me. They're called Madly Deeply, and it covers like the span of quite a few decades. And I like reading about like the filming of all the Harry Potter movies where he's like, Dame something. I think was it Maggie Smith? She like leans over and she's like, "What expression did you choose today?" As they're filming a scene at the Great Hall, and I thought that was really funny. So yeah, that's kind of what I read.
I love this. Yeah, I'm a celebrity memoir. Just something to be said about like just understand the true lives of the Hollywood people. Like they're just like us. It's just like the us says. They're just like us. They have the same issues than us, only elevated with
It's
fame.
it's fun to see what they're willing to say on the
Yeah.
record.
Yeah. So, Yulin, tell us where you can find you online.
You can find me primarily on Instagram at Yulin.Kuang, Yulin.Kuang. There is a Yulin Kuang on Instagram who is not me. That is my cousin because she has the same name. It's different Chinese characters, but the Anglicization is still Yulin Kuang, but I am the verified one. So,
There we go. Thank you, Yulin, for being on the show.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thanks for joining me on this episode of the What to Read Next podcast. If you enjoy our bookish conversations and want more recommendations, don't forget to subscribe so you never miss an episode. Also, head on over to the What to Read Next blog for a list of books mentioned in today's show. Happy reading!